Hello, welcome to Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. And this very special Christmas video, if you're watching this post-Christmas, is going to be very odd. This is going to be a deep dive and full review of the Orruk Warclans Battletome for Age of Sigmar 4. This is kind of an interesting book compared to the other Battletomes we've had out, because really it's two armies in one with a manifestation lore that both armies share between them, which is cool. I'm going to follow this video up with tier lists and other stuff in the future. And obviously, the books, when they emerge, do not arrive with points. So we might see some points adjustments in the future compared to the points we see now. But we're going to look at all of the rules. I'm going to try and give you my best opinion on how everything works. And if you do enjoy this video, please do like it, leave a comment, and you can always, if you want, join my Patreon to help support me to create more videos in the future. Now, before that we go on and talk about this, let's quickly talk about Urruks in Age of Sigmar 4. Normally, we keep the stats, or we track the stats between the two different armies, Ironjaws and obviously Kruleboyz. Both of those two armies are doing okay. Ironjaws doing worse than Kruleboyz, so it's a little bit tough to not hope for a big overhaul with how this army works, at least the Ironjaws portion. Kruleboyz actually seem pretty fun. So before we get into this, let me know how you feel in the comments below about Ironjaws or Kruleboyz at the moment and how you're feeling about them at the end of the video. I'd be interested to see. Anyway, let's dive in and start looking at the rules. First thing we're going to look at are the new manifestations, which both of the two armies are going to be able to use. There are three. You've got Summon Foot of Gork. We've got the Foot of Gork, the Morkspit Marsh, and the Gork Roarer. Now, the Foot of Gork is actually two models, and when you do cast it, it's cast on a 7. It's cast on a 7 for both of the two armies. You set up within 12 inches of the caster, and then because the Foot of Gork is two pieces, each piece has to be within 12 inches of the caster and also within 9 inches of each other and 9 inches away from the enemy. Cast on a 7. The other two have got quite a nice casting value, only being cast on a 5. The Morkspit Marsh is cast on a 5 and set up wholly within 18 inches of the caster, and the Gork Roarer is wholly within 12 inches of the caster and 9 inches away from all enemy units. So that's quite nice. Two low casting values means even if you do magical intervention casting your opponent's turn, -1, it's still going to be a 6 to cast, which is pretty good. So I don't hate that at all. First spell that we're going to look at is going to be the Foot. As a Foot fan myself, the Foot of Gork is two models, as I said, and 8 health and 4 up save, and they share that health pool. So if you were to attack one, then they would both be taken off the board. It says that here. Okay. Now, what does the Foot do once you've set it up on the board? Now, don't forget when you set it up, you have to set it up within 12 inches of cast and 9 inches away, 9 inches from the enemy, and it doesn't move. So what happens? Well, in your movement phase, once per turn, you pick apart this manifestation to be the target, so one of the two pieces. Remove the target from the battlefield and set up again on the battlefield wholly within 9 inches of the other part of this manifestation. Roll a d3 for each enemy unit within 3 inches of the target. On a 2-up, inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the roll. The unit that has stomped keyword until the start, that unit, has a stomped keyword until the start of your next turn, which is awesome. I love that. Yeah, get stomped. And then subtract 1 from the number of dice rolled. We're making charge rolls for stomp units to a minimum of 1. Now, that's going to be really, really hard to do because the way you set it up is you're going to cast it in your turn probably. Then in their turn, they're going to just charge it and kill it. So maybe you'll have to cast it in their turn, hope they don't charge it and kill it, then start doing stomps because it'll be in your next. Oh, actually, no. It's your movement phase. You'll cast it in the hero phase. Oh my God, you'll cast it in the hero phase, and then, whoa, okay. It's not difficult to do at all. Cast it, stomp. Amazing. Okay, now you can only stomp in your turn, but you can stomp a lot. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, Foot fans of the world, it's getting real. That's actually really good. That's super fun. Like, and if it's not, it doesn't end up being super good, it's at least really, really fun. And normally these manifestations for your faction manifestations are not very cool. So this is great. Love this. All I can say is just best foot forward with this manifestation. Our next manifestation is the Gork Roarer. It's cast on a 5 and has to be set within 12 inches of the caster and 9 inches away from the enemy. Move 6 inches, so it's a mobile manifestation with 6 health, 5 up save, and it's got a toxic gas attack. So 5 attacks, damage 2, hits on a 2, wounds on a 4, rend 1, damage D3, which is pretty good. It's not very survivable, but these manifestations are survivable by the fact you can keep casting them. That's why they're good. But it has a pretty cool ability called the Bellowing War Cries, which you do in your hero phase. You pick a friendly Ironjaws or Kruleboyz Wizard or Priest. So either Kruleboyz Wizard or Priest, Ironjaws Wizard and Kruleboyz Wizard or Priest, within 3 inches of this manifestation to be the target. You pick either a 1 or a 2 to add to the casting rolls or the chanting rolls for the target until the start of your next turn. Then roll a number of dice equal to the number picked. For each 1 to 2, you allocate 1 damage point to the target. So that would be the wizard or the priest. Ward rolls can be made for those damage points. And for each 5+, and then you would think this would be bad, but it's actually great. Until the start of your next turn, add 1 to charge rolls for friendly Kruleboyz or Ironjaws units while they're wholly within 12 inches of this manifestation, which is pretty great. So, 1 or 2 damage isn't that big a deal on your wizard or priest because they've got quite a high wound pool. You could always rally them back later because normally you try to keep your wizards and priests out of combat. +2 to cast could be really good. Are you bringing a manifestation just to get +2 to cast? Maybe not. But the +2 to charge, potentially, unlikely, is pretty nice. On top of the fact, it's a manifestation that can go over and do a little fight if you wanted it to. Maybe bodyguard one of your wizards or priests. So genuinely pretty interesting. Our next manifestation, or last one for this set, is the Mork's Pit Marsh. So this can be set up wholly within 18 inches of the caster, and it's cast on a 5, which is pretty low. And it's got pretty cool abilities. As you can see, it's a static manifestation, so it means it can be deployed closer than 9 inches to the enemy. It's got 8 health and a 5-up save. And it probably has a ward save as well. Let me go check. It does have a ward save. Okay, cool. It's got 2 abilities. One, which is a bit meh, which is Tricksy Footing. Subtract 3 from the control scores of enemy units while they're within 6 inches of this manifestation. Now, seeing as you can cast that in your turn, you could just stick this next to an objective and be like, cool, your control score is going to be, below 3, like -3. That's actually pretty good. The next one, though, the passive Grasping Gunge. Enemy units cannot use run abilities. Don't forget, redeploy is a run ability while they're within 6 inches of this manifestation. So enemy units cannot use run abilities while they're within 6 inches of manifestation. It's pretty nice to just stick out on the board, when your opponent is taking their turn as well, because they can't maybe do run and charge, a bunch of different stuff. No redeploys, though, feels very strong, especially as several of your, both armies want to do quite a lot of combat damage. Ironjaws definitely want to do a lot of combat. Kruleboyz have got more shooting that they can bring to the table, but you still don't want them redeploying away. So pretty nice, low casting value, large footprint. It's not actually a foot, though. But yeah, like a large area and it's 6 inches. You're going to set it within 18 and it's within 6 inches. So it's going to be a 24-inch effective range, which is very nice. So great. Overall, 3 quite interesting spells. Are they going to be as effective as you want them to be? I don't know, especially compared to the other free manifestations that are around, but they're pretty flavorful. I really like them. I think if I was an Ironjaws player or even a Kruleboyz player, I'd probably give them a go. So I like them. They're not bad. Great work. Now we're going to look at the battle traits for the Ironjaws, and we're going to look through the whole Ironjaws army, then we'll do the whole Kruleboyz army. So Ironjaws faction rules. So these are your battle traits, and as you can see, they fit onto half a page, which is pretty good because it means you don't have to remember a lot, which as a destruction player, obviously that's something that's hard to do. However, I think it's fair to say, before we start to read these, that many people will be very disappointed that these are the same battle traits as the faction packs. In fact, actually, the Ironjaws War says once per battle, which eventually got FAQ'd and changed. So I assume we're going to see the FAQ'd version again, as opposed to this version, which I have covered. So they're thin battle traits. You don't have a lot of battle traits. You don't have a lot of extra stuff. Which is quite disappointing. I feel your disappointment as well. It's my job to review these things and analyze things, especially for new people. So if you are an already existing Ironjaws player, I'm sure you're like, Rob, I don't need to tell me about it again. But for new people, or for people who maybe want to get into Ironjaws in 2025, we're going to go through it, okay? I feel your disappointment. I'm on your side. All right. Ironjaws battle traits, you've got 2. The first one is Mighty Destroyers, which once per turn in the army in any hero phase, including the opponents, so every hero phase, you can pick a friendly Ironjaws unit that was not set up this turn to be the target. The target can move up to 3 inches. It can move into combat. If it was in combat at the start of the move, it must end that move in combat. it's not necessarily a great ability, especially when other armies get like 3d6 charges, like +2 to move to everyone within 12, etc., etc. There's not necessarily like a massive uptick in effectiveness for your whole army, and that's really it. That's all you get for Ironjaws as like a special ability, which is pretty garbage, to be honest. Like, it's not that it's a garbage ability. It's got some really nuanced tactical uses, but it's pretty slender and pretty bad. Anyway, and then now the other ability says, what it says here will probably be FAQ'd like it was in the battle scroll. So it says once per battle in your charge phase, but the update was once per battle per hero. So for every hero you've got the opportunity to call an Ironjaws War. And then when you do that, you pick a friendly hero to do it, so once per hero. And then for the rest of the turn, the following effects apply to Ironjaws units while they're holding within 18 inches of the target. +1 to charge rolls, which, as we already know now, we could potentially stack that with some lucky 5-up rolls on our manifestation for maybe +3 to charge, and add 1 to the attack characteristic of those units' melee weapons. And seeing as when you're playing Ironjaws, it's basically a pure melee army, you do want +1 to your attacks profile because you want to do as much output as possible. So it is a little underwhelming as an allegiance set, but it does mean that when you want to, you can get more attacks, which is pretty nice. And also you can get +1 to your charge, making them more reliable. So it's a little underwhelming, but there is a marked effect. And that's something worth talking about. You know, Ironjaws players are not going to stop playing with their Ironjaws. I bought an Ironjaws army at the start of this edition. I'm super pumped about this as well. Like, not necessarily the greatest, but it's what we have for now. Next thing for the Ironjaws is your new terrain feature, the Boss Rock Tower. Now, don't forget, Games Workshop in their recent FAQ said that you do not need to deploy your terrain feature if you don't want to, because it creates a little area on the board where potentially your opponent can charge, which is a bit of a problem. But thankfully, you've got a terrain feature which you can kind of garrison. So the Boss Rock Tower's got 12 health and a 4-up save. Doesn't have a ward save. And it's got 3 different abilities. It's got Manda Tower, Here We Go, and I'm Off. Here We Go basically says in the hero phase you can put a Ironjaws infantry hero that starts within 3 on it. I'm Off says in your movement phase you can get off it if you want to, and then Manda Tower just gives you all of the restrictions about being on the tower. But the important part is once you do stick an infantry character on top of it, you can once per turn in your hero phase use the aggressively bossy ability. You pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches of this terrain feature to be the target, which is excellent. That is a massive range. Love that. Then you roll a dice and you add 1 to the roll if this terrain feature has a shouty boss, which is you've manned it with an infantry hero. And on 4+, 3+ if you've got a shouty boss, pick one of the following effects to apply for the target until the start of your next turn. First one, that's ours. You get subtract 3 from the control score of the unit. It's pretty garbage. Zog off with your magic. Subtract 1 from casting rolls and or chanting rolls for the target. Might not be bad if there's like a multi-caster on the board and you really do want to shut down their casting a bit. And then Oi Old It, which would probably be the most popular one. Subtract 1 from the number of dice rolled and making charge rolls to the target to a minimum of 1. Now, this is all until the start of your next turn. So you're facing off against Varangard, and sure, maybe they've got a 3d6 charge, but you can put it back down to a 2d6 charge. You can just be like, no. Which is pretty good on a 3-up. So 3-up's not mega reliable, but it's pretty nice, to be honest, to be able to shut down their charging units, especially if they're trying to set up for a big counter charge as well. You can shut that down. That's pretty good. So it makes that so they've got no chance of doing that. They might have set it up and been like, if he tries to go near that objective, I'll counter charge them. And you can just be like, 3-up. Well, you're only going to be counter charged on a D6 instead of 2D6, which is pretty nice. So actually pretty effective. Kind of odd for an Ironjaws army. Like I guess it's an intimidation attack. You just say, no, you can't do that thing. Nice to add into the army. It's a 3-up, so it's not super reliable, but when it does work, it will work well, and it's going to help your army, which is cool. Also, I think it's worth noting that it does mean that your character, your hero, effectively has 12 ablative wounds as well, because obviously they're buried inside of it, and you can't attack the character, you can only attack the terrain feature the character's inside of, which is pretty nice. And even if you then kill it, they only take D3 mortal. So that's a really nice bonus for maybe protecting a really important buff character in your army. So if you are writing your army list, you need to choose one of 4 battle formations. You've got Natural Disaster, which is the ability you get from choosing the Ironjaws Brawl. You can only choose one battle formation. The effect of this is if you make an unmodified charge roll of an 8+ for a friendly non-hero Ironjaws unit, add 1 to the attack characteristic of that unit's melee weapons for the rest of the turn. You might have noticed that +1 from your big war, +1 from this, +2 to chart, +2. Now we also know we have our manifestation that can give us potentially +2 to charge, +2 attacks on the charge. Is it unlikely? It's a little bit unlikely, but now that we can drop our other manifestation to make it so they can't redeploy, we can make some long bomb charges, have some fun. Let's go. Iron Fist is another battle formation, gives you smashing and bashing. First time, and also +2 to attack. Come on, let's go. The first time each turn that the enemy unit is destroyed by a fight ability used by a friendly Ironjaws unit, add 1 to hit rolls for combat attacks made by the next friendly Ironjaws unit that is picked to use a fight ability for the rest of the turn. You can also just spend a commander point to get +1 to hit, so that's pretty rubbish. Weird Fist, Spirit of Gork is a passive. Weird Fist is a battle formation. Spirit of Gork is the ability. It's a passive, and friendly Ironjaws infantry units have a ward save of 6+, where they're wholly within 12 inches of any friendly Ironjaws wizards or priests. Now, with the points out, we know that we can build quite a lot of hard boys. Zogrok, Anvil Smasher, we get to him later. We've actually seen that list do okay. And we've seen Zogrok with Brutes as well. Ironjaws Infantry with a ward save, even if it's a 6-up. Lots of health on the board, could be okay. And then the Grunter Stampede, Here We Come, is a passive where you add the number of units that have been destroyed this battle to the move characteristic of friendly Gore Grunters and more Grunter units to a maximum 4. That's pretty useful because you can move them much quicker towards the box which you're going to keep them in because they suck. So probably the one that I like the most here is Natural Disaster. So it's a friendly non-hero Ironjaws unit, potentially gets +1 attack on the charge. You spike big, all of a sudden you're doing a bunch of damage. I love that. Also on your army list, you get to choose 1 heroic trait and 1 artifact. They are the same as also the index, but I'm going to go through them again. First one, an Eye for the Fight, is a reaction that you declare to redeploy command for a friendly Ironjaws unit wholly within 12 inches. If you roll a 1 to 3 when determining the distance that unit can move, you can use the value of 4 instead. This sucks, so just don't do that. The next one, Hulking Brute, is done in any charge phase. If this unit charges turn, pick an enemy within an inch, roll a d3 on a 2+, inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the roll. If this unit is an unmodified charge roll, turn was an 8+, roll a d6 instead. Don't hate d6 mortal damage. That's good. I love that. That's pretty cool. And then Mega Bossy is a passive. If this unit charges turn for the rest of the turn, add 1 to charge rolls for friendly Ironjaws units while they're wholly within 18 inches of this unit. So this is a heroic trait which can be taken on any hero, not your general. Oh, sorry. And even your general or not your general, but not on unique units. So you can't put this on a named character. So that's pretty cool. These 3 are like, one's obviously better than the others, I guess. Mega Bossy. You're either going to do impact hits or Mega Bossy for +1 to charge, but I don't know which. Let me know in the comments below which one you've enjoyed the most. One of your heroes, not a unique hero, but any of the other heroes, including your general, can take an artifact, and that is the bot from the boss's horde. There are 3 to choose from. Trophy Skulls, add 10 to this unit's control score. It's pretty good if you're taking like a Mega Boss on Maw Crusher, or even a Mega Boss on foot, really, and just make it so that they're really solid and going to definitely hold an objective. You got the Amberbone Whetstone, pick one of this unit's melee weapons, add 1 to the rend characteristic for that weapon for the rest of the battle. Love that. +1 rend. Don't hate that. And then Armor of Gork has a 6-up ward save. So all of the effects are actually okay, but the effects are like they're kind of the same as each other, but they're not necessarily like stand out. You're not being like, oh my god, my game's going to be so different because my Maw Crush has a 6-up ward save. But they are nice little addendums, I guess, for your army. A bit like your battle trait. Really anemic, but they exist and they're kind of a nice bonus. So your spell lore, the Lore of the Weird, has got 3 different spells. One of those spells is an unlimited spell. So that's Bash 'em Lads, which means multiple wizards can cast it, but the same wizard can't cast it twice. The other 2 spells can only be attempted once per hero phase. So Bash 'em Lads, you pick a friendly Ironjaws wizard to cast his spell, then you pick a visible friendly Ironjaws unit wholly within 12 inches of them to be the target. The target's melee weapons have crit 2 hits for the rest of the turn. More attacks with crit 2 hits, more damage. Let's go. All right. Absolutely brilliant. That's a good one to have. You can do it unlimited times. Unit of Brutes, crit 2 hits. Another unit of Brutes, it's going to blow your mind. Crit 2 hits. The one sad thing about this is for the rest of the turn, and you probably want this to be till the start of your next turn. So if you get charged, you can fight them back. And then you've got Mighty Headbutt, which is cast on a 6. Pick a friendly Ironjaws wizard to cast your spell, and pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches of them to be the target. Inflict D3 mortal damage on the target, and if the target is a wizard, you inflict 3 mortal damage on the target instead. It's kind of nice, I guess, to do 3 mortal damage at range if you want to, but I guess it's one of those ones you choose if there's a wizard that's bothering you. The Great Big Green-Handed Gork is cast on a 7. Pick a friendly Ironjaws wizard to cast his spell, then pick a visible friendly unit wholly within 12 inches. Which I think is an increase from 9 inches in the last version. Remove the target from the battlefield and set it up again wholly within 24 inches of the caster, and more than 9 inches from all enemy units. Now, seeing as we know that we can get potentially more charge bonuses, like potentially, I think we've got up to 3 so far in our heads. We've got the ability to teleport a unit, get a big charge off, bang crit 2 hits on them, do a bunch of smashing, and then hopefully they don't hit us back and we're in a good spot. So not necessarily like the greatest series of spells, like you could have 3d6 charges, you could have Strike Last as an option, but a teleport and crit 2 hits isn't bad. Hopefully you're going to get enough value out of those for it to be worth it. But yeah, a teleport and crit 2 hits, I'll take that. Right, looking at the prayer lore, you've got 3 prayers, and one of them is also got the unlimited keyword, so it could be done by multiple different priests. First one is Get and Beat, and it's on a 4. You pick a priest to obviously do it, then you pick a visible friendly Ironjaws unit wholly within 12 inches. For the rest of the turn, you add 1 to charge rolls to the target. In addition, if the chanting roll was 8+, you add 1 to the number of dice rolled when making charge rolls to the target to a maximum of 3. Now, it's important to remember that with our new terrain feature, that we can get potentially +2 to our chanting rolls. So it's possible on a roll of a 6 that we can immediately get our 8+ that we need there. Normally what happens with priests is you'll attempt to do a prayer, and then what you'll do is you'll bank those points for later. But with +2 from the terrain feature, you genuinely have got a good opportunity here to get an almost guaranteed get and beat with a 3d6 charge on a unit. Then if we go back to our spell lore and do a teleport, now we're having a great time. We got 3d6 charge with +1 to charge, teleporting over the board. That's a pretty interesting combination. Not necessarily, yeah, there you go. That's a pretty fun, interesting thing that you can do. You just throw a unit of brutes at your opponent. The Fixing Beat is on a 4, and what this does is lets you pick a friendly Ironjaws unit wholly within 12 inches. On a 4, it's going to heal D6. On an 8+, it's going to be D3 +3. And then finally, Killer Beat is on a 5. Now, previously, this used to be on a 4. You pick an Ironjaws priest to chant it, and then you pick an Ironjaws unit wholly within 12. You add 1 to the damage characteristic of the target's melee weapons for the rest of the turn. Again, it would be really nice if that was until the start of your next hero phase. And if the chanting roll was a 10 or more, you can pick another eligible unit to be a second target, which is +2. It used to be a 4 and an 8. It's now a 5 and a 10. But when you do have a priest inside of your big tower, you are going to be getting +2 to it. So I guess it's about the same, but it does require you to have the priest in the tower to do so. And because you've got to be wholly within 12 inches, that means you've got to probably deploy that quite deep to get that around. In fact, actually, clarification, the spell bonus is actually from a manifestation. So your prayer bonus and manifestation is not from your terrain feature. I apologize, I was getting confused there. It's not from your terrain feature, it's from your manifestation. That's what it's from. So that's where you're going to be able to get that. So maybe if you do take those manifestations, maybe you're relying on it a bit more. In fact, actually, it feels like with that manifestation, you've been forced into it now. And it's not the terrain feature. Thank you very much for highlighting that to me. But a review of these, +1 damage, 3d6 charge. It's all the things I was kind of complaining about with the spell lore. If you think I wasn't complaining, but you know what I mean. That does feel like a great recipe of things to stick onto units that could do a bunch of damage. So pretty nice. Right, now we're going to start looking at the units. And the first hero that we're going to look at is Kragnos, the most famous of the orcs, actually. Kragnos can be your general if you want him to be. Anyway, he's got 18 health, a 4-up save, moves 10, got control value of 15.
Merry Christmas. Ho, ho.
So the first hero, Kragnos, apologies about that. Someone donated some cash to the show, which is very cute. He is a melee beatstick. If you are new to Age of Sigmar, I'm going to go through his rules. If you're not, he's exactly the same. Anyway, so Dreadmay, 6 attacks, damage 4, 6 attacks with the hooves, and 3 attacks, damage D3 with the Tusk Breaker. It's a pretty good combat profile. 18 health, 4-up save, and he has a 5-up ward save. It's very good. It's very expensive, but very good. One of the main reasons that people take him, because he has this End of Empires ability that in your charge phase, For the rest of the turn, you add 1 to the number of dice rolled, making charge rolls for friendly destruction units while they're wholly within 12 inches of this unit to a maximum of 3. So we could go through all those extra steps we talked about earlier to try to get a 3 dice charge, or you can just bring Kragnos, who's also a combat beatstick and gives everyone a 3d6 charge, which is why he's so popular. He's also got the Warmaster keyword you can see down here, and unique, which means Warmaster, he'd be a general unless you have another Warmaster which you choose between, and unique means you can only have one of him. He's got the monster keyword, and this is where keywords are located again if you're new, because those things relate to loads of different abilities. In addition, he's got this fun charge ability where on a 2-up, he does an amount of mortal wounds equal to the roll. However, if it's a monster, you roll 2d6 and you times the dice by each other unless the total is a 7, meaning you can do potentially up to 36 mortal wounds on the charge. He's also got the Shielding Violet, which is a reaction to your opponent declaring a spell ability. If this unit was picked to be the target, you roll a dice on a 3-up, you ignore the effects of that spell. This unit can then use this ability more than once per phase, but only once per spell ability. And lastly, he's got the Avatar of Destruction. If this unit would be automatically destroyed, it's not automatically destroyed, and you only take 6 health instead. Obviously, he has what we call a economies of scale ability, so that 3d6 charge, because it's multiple different units. He's also a great combat piece himself. He's got a great wound pool or health pool. He's got a good save. He's got a 5-up ward save. He can go out there and smash and have a good time. Absolutely perfect. Go have fun. Okay, our next unique Warmaster, so you can only take one of him, and Warmaster, so be the general, is Gordrak, who currently at time of recording is 380 points, just got a points reduction. He's got 20 health and a 3-up save, but no ward save. So that's a bit of a problem. Now, he's got an okay combat profile with 8 attacks that do damage 2 and another 8 attacks that do damage 3 from the mount. Problem is that they are only rend 1, and lots of the big threats that are out there have got pretty good armor saves, and with all-out defense basically means no rend. So I think that's the thing that people generally find to be a problem with Gordrak, is the rend is an issue. He hits okay, hits on a 3 wounds on a 2, his mount hits on a 4 wounds on a 2. Now, he's got some other abilities. He's got this Strength from Victory ability where at the end of any turn, if any damage points were allocated to enemy units, he gets a War token to a maximum of 3. Till the end of the next turn, you add 1 to the attacks characteristic of this unit's weapon as for each War token it has. And it doesn't say that any go away. So I think once you've done it, you've just got 3 dark War tokens forever. He's also got the Voice of Gork ability, which for some reason is once per battle. Until the start of your next turn, you add 1 to hit rolls for combat attacks made by friendly Ironjaws units while they're wholly within 18 inches. So +1 to hit for everyone, but only once per battle. Not really the reason to take him versus obviously 3d6 charge all the time from Kragnos, who does more damage as well. And then finally, you got Monster Grapple, which is a rampage where you pick an enemy monster in combat on a 3-up, you choose one of their companion weapons, and you halve the number of attacks coming from the companion weapon. So it's a pretty underwhelming rampage as well, unfortunately. Because you can't give him a trait or an artifact, I don't think Gordrak necessarily fits in with like a cohesive army playstyle, and as like a pure output piece, I don't think he necessarily brings enough power, especially when he doesn't have things like crit mortals or high rend or anything. So yeah, he's a little bit underwhelming compared to some of the other output you can get in the book. Our next hero is the Mega Boss on Maw Crusher. He's got the same profile as he did if you are an Ironjaws fan, but just so you know, you actually lost an ability called Smash Through. So just to keep you updated. So he's got the same kind of output and profile as Gordrak. He's got 2 less health with 20 health, and he's got he's got 18 health, whereas Gordrak has 20, 3-up save, no ward save, and can be your general in the army. Obviously, he's a hero monster, but you can take multiple of them. And currently, at the points you can take, I think you can have 5 in an army, which is pretty funny. Anyway, a control value of 5 and only move 10, so they're not quite as fast. Now, we know that if you were to take Kragnos or other ways, there's potentially ways to get pluses to charge and 3d6 charge, so those things are all good. And then he's got 2 special abilities. He's got the War token that Gordrak has, the ability to get up War tokens and then add up to 3 attacks to his combat profile. So it could go up to like 11 attacks, damage 2 with a boss chopper. Maybe that's why they never made it damage 3. They were a little bit concerned that would be too much. Turns out that was wrong. And then he's got an ability that's done once per turn in the army for any combat phase. So if you did take multiple Maw Crushers, only one unit could do it. And I do really like this ability. Destructive Bulk If this unit charges this turn, roll a d3 on a 2+, this unit can move 2d6 inches. It can pass through the combat ranges of enemy units and can end the move in combat. Then pick an enemy unit that this unit passed across during the move, inflict an amount of mortal damage, and then double that if it's infantry. Now, that's a pretty fun ability where you charge in, then you move another 2d6 inches, you do some mortal damage, you end up somewhere else you weren't expecting your opponent to... You ended somewhere your opponent wasn't expecting. The issue gets to when you get there, have you done enough damage with your boss chopper and more Crusher's Fists? And I don't think probably you have. The delivery system is really good, but you're delivering like a wet noodle. It does okay damage, but it's not like what you really expect from a giant pie plate model out there. So that's a Mega Boss and More Crusher. Our next hero is a unique hero, and one of my personal favorites, Orruk Anvil Smasher. So he's got 7 health, 3 up save, only moves 4 inches, so he's slow. One thing I need to talk about right now, as we're starting to get into the units later, is that with the most recent update to the seasonal special rules, we can potentially take some heroes in this army that are going to give us +2 move. Go watch my my Battle Scroll update video about it. And that is going to change the efficacy and the effectiveness of some of the slower infantry that we've got in this book. And Orruk being slow means he's not going to be able to be the person who makes you move faster, but can move faster, which is pretty nice as well. Anyway, he's got 7 health, 3 up save, moves 4, and that's a problem. Now, he can be armed with either the Ward Smashing Chopper or the Grunter Tongs, okay? And it's important to know which one he's going to be armed with. Because if he's armed with the Grunter Tongs, then he gets +1 to the roll when you do the Power of the Great Green God, which you do in your hero phase. You pick a friendly Ironjaws infantry unit, and you make a forging roll. Like I say, it's a 4+, unless you have the Grunter Tongs, in which case it's a 3+. The target's melee weapons have crit mortals. So now we can add plus damage. We can do crit mortals. That's pretty nice. So I love crit mortals. Crit mortals on the Power of the Great Green God, good. Especially brutes, mortals, punch. Now, he also, if you decide not to take the Grunter Tongs, you can take the Ward Smashing Chopper, and you get both abilities. It's just easier to do the crit mortals if you take the Grunter Tongs. The Ward Smashing Chopper, though, amazing. So it's a passive where if an attack made with a unit's Ward Smashing Chopper scores a hit, the target has the Ward Smash keyword for the rest of the battle. Ward rolls cannot be made for a Ward Smashed unit. Pretty good. Now, not necessarily all of the biggest threats out there in the game have high ward saves, but normally ward saves are something you do to make your army more effective. So the fact that you can charge this guy in, smash a ward, and then start fighting is pretty good. One of the major problems maybe is you have a lack of strike first, strike last. So you'd, let's say you charge in with a unit of brutes, you'd smash a ward on a unit with this guy, then they would attack your brutes, and then the brutes would attack. So it's a bit of a negative order of activation, or it's not as advantageous as you'd want it to be. For instance, if you could get like strike last on the opposing unit, then both of those 2 units could go beforehand, reduce the ward save, then fight would be good. He's also got Clonk. Famous little Clonk, who's a Rockbrow Squig. Clonk's a token, and you can re-roll the forging roll to the unit while Clonk's on the battlefield. However, the first time you roll a 1 for an armor save, Clonk will be removed from the battlefield, which is a bit of a negative. They've not done really well with tokens and how tokens are used, because it's always the first time you ever take any damage, Clonk immediately dies, which is pretty sad. But that does mean you could have a 3-up re-rollable ability to do mortal damage on a unit. I like this. I keep looking at my brutes that I bought and my Orruk and putting them together and trying to make it work. It does feel like a lot of a damage. Extra attacks, loads of extra sources for extra attacks. Now we're doing mortals, could be really interesting. Next up, we have the Mega Boss. Now, the Mega Boss has lost an ability in this book compared to the free rules that we got. Now, Mega Boss is 8 health, 3 up save, moves 4 inches, control value 2. It's got 8 attacks, damage 2, but still a paltry rend 1. Now, he's got the same ability that Godrak and the Mega Boss and More Crusher have, where you can build up war tokens, you can potentially have more attacks. You can have up to 11 attacks with this guy, damage 2. But he does have this ability called Lead the Brutes, which is kind of an amalgamation of some of his other abilities, where this unit can fight, and then as soon as he's fought, he can pick a brute unit that is wholly within his combat range, or not wholly within his combat range, within his combat range, which is 3 inches. And then if you do so, when that unit then fights, you can add 1 to the attacks characteristic of the target's melee weapons for the rest of the turn. So that's another way of getting +1 attack on a unit, as well as obviously calling the Ironjaws War, making an 8-inch charge. So that's +3 attacks on a unit of brutes, potentially. But it does again mean this guy has to fight first, very much in the kind of Zogrok situation, where this guy's got to fight first, and then if you're fighting in the same order of activation, the opponent will get to fight before you. So pretty interesting, the change to the Mega Boss on foot. Ultimately, movement is still a problem, obviously, for this army. But yeah, +1 attack from this guy, and he does some okay fighting himself. Next up, and really important for your army, you've got your Weird Knob Shaman. This is a force multiplier for your army. We know that we can do spells from the Weird Knob Shaman. He is 6 health with a 6-up save, which isn't super survivable because you don't have an armor save. Moves 4, and then it's got like a kind of fun shooting attack that does D3 damage, and it obviously isn't designed to be in combat. Although the War Staff does have 3 attacks damage D3, so maybe. Now he's a wizard level 1, which means he's going to have the ability to cast 1 spell, but you do have the ability to increase his wizard level by having a unit of Ironjaws that have 10 or more models wholly within 12 inches of him. So that means you could be a wizard level 2 for most of the game, which is pretty nice. You know, being able to put more manifestations on the board. Wizards normally cost around 100 points for a wizarding level. You know, he's not necessarily super survivable, but he does have a big health pool. If you're near that manifestation to give you +2 to cast, you can now have +2 to cast with +2 to cast when it's walking next to him with 2 wizard levels. That makes him the same as like a Slan, which is pretty good. So yeah, not too bad for the Weird Knob Shaman. Also in the support role for your army is the War Chanter. So the Orruk Warclans War Chanter has got 6 health, 4-up save, and he's a priest level 1, which means he's going to be able to access that prayer law that you had earlier. So a little bit more survivable than obviously the Weird Knob. Moves 4 inches, slow. Got 6 attacks though, doing damage D3, which isn't too bad as a profile because he's got the Rhythm of Destruction ability, which at the end of any turn, if any enemy models are slain this turn by this unit's combat attacks, give this unit D3 ritual points, which means more opportunity to do those, either the heal prayers or the damage prayers. So not too bad. Again, you could stick him next to that manifestation, try and get more ritual points up. I think when you do the list writing for Ironjaws, one of the most difficult things is that, like, you're like, oh, I need the wizard, I need a priest to gain access to those buffs to really increase the effectiveness of my army. Then you need like maybe a mega boss or Zogrok to increase the effectiveness of those units as well. And now you spend a lot of points on priests, on characters, which makes your drops much higher, which hopefully the new Battle Scroll update maybe will change. And maybe your drops can be a little bit lower now with some of those heroes being takeable and some of the others. But anyway, War Chanter is a priest. You need a priest, and he's got a way to get more ritual points. Cool. Right, we've got done with all our heroes. We do have like the Tusk boss and the R boss hero to deal with, but we're going to look at those in a minute when we look at those units. So we're going to start looking at units, and we're going to start looking at brutes first, because it does feel like brutes are a little bit pushed in this book. Obviously, a mega boss gives plus attacks, and their profile seems pretty nice. There's 5 models in a brute unit, reinforceable up to a unit of 10. They've got 3 health each and a 3-up save. So the comparison to things like Chosen is fair. I think where we start to fall down is their movement's a little bit slow, and while we do have 3d6 charge in the book, a little bit difficult to get off. We have teleport in the book as well. So it feels like, I want to admit right now, I don't know why brutes don't seem to be working in competitive Age of Sigmar. I think it's the movement. I think it's the hit to hit. I think it's a mixture of different things. Maybe it's you need too many synergy points to make it work. But they feel incredible to me. Anyway, so you got 5. You can have 5 and up to a unit of 10. If you have 10, that's going to be 31 attacks, with 1 in 5 models having a gore chopper, which is damage 3. But we know we can get +1 damage. So you could have a ton of damage 3 attacks and a ton, and 6 damage 4 attacks. You can get crit mortals as well, which is crazy. So like I feel like they could just do a ton of output. And also they have this their own special ability, the passive called You Messin, where enemy units with health characters of 1 or 2 cannot contest objectives while they're in combat with this unit. I just don't know why this unit isn't. I would like to be clear, I have seen Ironjaws players and Ironjaws armies doing well with, because this is effectively the same as the index, doing well with this to a certain point. Their current win rate sits at about 30 to 35%. So generally, they like aren't like top of the pile. Obviously, that's literally bottom of the pile actually. But like I have seen people go 4-0 and 5-1. It's the same thing as Stormcast, where Stormcast have a 50% win rate, but they have the most 5-0s in the game. So their win rate isn't necessarily correlating with your wins in the game. And so therefore, and the list that I've seen have run a lot of brutes, like 2 units of 10. And it makes sense because it feels like that output is like pushed as hell. So I like brutes. I feel like Games Workshop likes brutes, and I'd probably paint up brutes myself. I think they're good, but numbers say they're not. Our next hero is the Ardboy Big Boss. He's got 6 health and a 3-up save, and he is an infantry foot character that's in a support role for Ardboys. He's got 7 attacks damage too, which is like a pretty legit profile, considering most Stormcast are just like 5 attacks damage too. But hits on a 4, which I think obviously everyone finds pretty bad. He has this passive called Iron Fist Commander, where if a friendly Ardboys unit holding within 12 inches of this unit uses the rally command, you can make 3 additional rally rolls of a d6. Which means potentially you're getting another Ardboy back when you're doing a rally on an Ardboy unit, which is a command ability you can do to return models back to the board or back to a unit. He's also got a passive called Get Bashing, where you add one to shield bash rolls for friendly Ardboys units while they're wholly within 12 inches of this unit. I think it's fair to say that if you're taking the Ardboy Big Boss, it's because you're taking the Ardboys. So if you look at the Ardboys, there's 10 models in an Ardboy unit with 2 health each. No H's for Ardboys. 2 health each. And you reinforce them up to a unit of 20. So it's 40 health, 3-up save, no ward save for this unit. And I know people say I'm a little bit obsessed with a ward save, but, you know, like it's a lot of health on a 3-up save. Don't get me wrong. A ward save would also be great. Anyway. So then the chopper or sticker attacks, 2 attacks each. So it's going to be like either 21 or 41 attacks, but hitting on 4s, this same kind of destruction problem you got here. And they've got anti-charge Rend 1. So if you do charge them, they are going to have Rend 2. And then they've got the shield bash ability, which they do in any combat phase, where you pick an enemy unit within an inch, then you roll a d6 for each model in this unit, and then you inflict 1 mortal damage on that unit. So it's either going to be 3 mortal damage. If you're near the Ardboy Big Boss, it's going to be 6 mortal damage. The concept of charging 2 units of Ardboys in with their full complement, and then potentially doing 12 mortal damage. It's a lot of keeping wholly within 12 before you've even swung an attack dice is kind of interesting. Incredibly hard to do with that movement being slower. Maybe better now that you've got the potential to get +2 movement from the new seasonal rules, and also maybe even better than that you also have got like 3d6 charges potentially this army as well. So a lot of options here. But not necessarily like, we'll see. It's a lot of health. Maybe if the units are cheaper, they get cheaper over the course of the battle scroll, they'll be more effective. The next units we're going to look at are the Weird Brute Wreckers and the Brute Ragers. Both units are units of 3 models, reinforceable up to unit of 6. They've got 3 health each and a 5-up save. The Weird Brute Wreckers have a 5-up ward save. They both have run and still charge as well, but they only move 4 inches. But with the new improved +2-inch move, potentially from the seasonal rules, 6 plus a run, that's 12 inches, 3d6 charges, pluses to charge. The difference between them really is that the Brute Ragers have strike first, thanks to the Unleashed Rage ability that you have here, on a turn in which they charged. So if they charged in, then they're going to get strike first. And there are 3 steps in combat: strike first, strike middle, strike last, which means they'll get to fight in the strike first step. And then the difference between them really is obviously the 5-up ward save and then the combat ability. Chain Smasher's got 6 attacks, hit on 4s, win on 3s, Rend 1, damage 1. When you give that crit 2 hits, a unit of 6 of these is going to be 36 attacks with crit 2 hits. It's quite a lot, but hitting on 4s, obviously. When you go the other way and you go for the Brute Ragers, there are only 3 attacks per model, hitting on 4s, win on 2s, Rend 1, damage 2. So they're comparable to Brutes, but just have a worse save, but have strike first, and they have less models. So I think ultimately the Weird Brute Wreckers probably are pretty fun and very usable, but maybe the strike first is actually pretty key to stacking the amount of damage you can do in an Ironjaws army. Let me know what you think in the comments below. The next hero we're going to look at is the Tusk Boss on Moorgrunter, and then we'll look at all the Moorgrunters together. Now, the Tusk Boss on Moorgrunter is kind of a fast combat piece with 14 health, 3-up save, moves 10 inches, control value 5, because he is a monster. has come down points recently, and I assume will come down points in this index, in this Battletome as well. So he's got a Pig Hacker with 7 attacks damage 2. He's got two like little fellas with him, so they've got 4 attacks damage 1. The More Grunter's Tusks have got 5 attacks damage 2, which can be increased. We'll talk about that in a moment. And the Trotters have got 4 attacks damage D3. Now, the profile for this is all hitting on 4s, and I think that that's a real problem. Let's talk about how More Grunters work, because all of them have got the Unstoppable Momentum passive. The effect of this is each time this unit uses a charge ability, it gains a momentum point. Each time it uses a run ability, it gains 2 momentum points. It can have a maximum of 3 momentum points. And you add the number of momentum points to the damage characteristic of the More Grunter's Tusks. At the end of each battle round, subtract 1 from the momentum points to a minimum of 0. Okay, so I've used this army. Tragic is how I would describe it. I've used this army. One of the things to talk about is that they're just too expensive right now. So they need to be much, much cheaper, even than the points. We're talking about a Tusk Boss or More Grunter should probably be about 240 points, with the other 2 being sub 200 points. But that does mean you can, in the future, potentially get 5 attacks, damage 5 at Ren 2. Ren 2 is actually quite rare in the Ironjaws army, sad to say. But you are still hitting on 4s, which is sad. The Tusk Boss himself has his own special ability, where once per turn in the army in any charge phase, at the head of the Stampede, if this unit charges phase, you can pick up to 3 friendly More Grunter units wholly within 12 inches of this unit that charge. Each target gains a momentum point. So if you charge the Tusk Boss in and also the other pigs, they can gain plus momentum. So they could basically be doing, if they've done no other momentum increases over the game, they could all be hitting with damage 5 attacks. But they don't necessarily do that because they just get shot off on magic, or they get told to 1d6 charge and then they just kind of fall to pieces. But like, this would work and is good. It just needs to be cheaper. That's all. So the other 2 Gore Grunters, you've got the More Grunter with Hacking Crew that's got a similar combat profile and a similar survivability, 12 health, 3 up save, move 10. They don't have anything like run and charge, so they're not super, super fast. But they obviously have got the ability to generate those momentum points, so the More Grunter's Tusks can do quite a lot of attacks, quite a lot of damage potentially. The special ability for the More Grunter with a Hacking Crew is that you get once per turn in your army, in your movement phase, you can carve a path where if this unit is in combat, it can move a distance up to its move characteristic, it can pass through models and the combat range of enemy units, then pick each enemy unit that this unit passed across during the move to be the targets. You roll a d3 for each target on a 2-up, you inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target to roll, then gain 2 momentum points. So it just does mean if your character, if this guy does get stuck in combat, he's got the opportunity to still generate momentum points and do some additional damage as well, which is kind of okay, to be honest. And now the More Grunter Gouger is the cheapest one and probably the most popular one. 12 health with a 4-up save, same move and control value 5. His output is really predicated on whether or not you generate momentum points with the Grunter's Tusks, but has got this fun ability called Flattened into the Mud, where once per turn across the army, so only usable once in any combat phase, if this unit charges turn, you can pick an enemy unit within an inch to be the target, then roll a dice and add the number of momentum points. On a 5-up, the target has strike last. So if you've got 4 momentum points on a 2+, you can give strike last, which is obviously super good for this army. And I've given you loads of examples as why. You want to charge in with a More Grunter, make the enemy unit strike last, then start smashing with your ward, smashing hammer, hitting with your mega boss, then hitting with your brutes, and then you'll like lift a bunch of stuff, which is kind of fun. I like that a lot. So More Grunter Gouge are really popular. Running an army of More Grunters, currently not very good. Lastly, we got the Gore Grunters. So Gore Grunters is a unit of 3 cavalry, reinforceable up to a unit of 6. Each one can, the unit can move 9 inches, and they've got 5 health each. So either 15 or 30 health on a 3-up save is pretty prodigious. In combat, they've got 2 combat profiles. The Rider uniquely doesn't have +1 damage on the charge. Normally, that's how you see cavalry work. Instead, they've given that to the Grunter. Unfortunately, the Grunter, with its +1 damage on the charge, it hits on a 5. And we've already talked about hitting on a 4 as being not the best. So now you win on a 2, and you have no rend. Whereas with the Chopper or Hacker Gore Grunters, the Rider has 4 attacks hitting on a 4, winning on 3, rend 1 with rend +1. But they're still only damage 1. But of course, We've talked about ways to improve different units, crit 2 hits, etc., a bunch of different stuff. And then the Gore Grunters have got a special ability on the charge, where if they charge, they do, on a 2+, they do D3 mortals. Gore Grunters I completely noped out of when I did the index review, and I've seen them pop up in a couple of lists. A couple of units of 3 have been okay. So there we go. So at this point, that is the end of the Ironjaws section in this review, and we'll start looking at the Kruleboyz. But I think I share the frustration that many people who are at least watching this video, if you're an existing Ironjaws player, will feel that it is a copy and paste of the original book. If you're new to Age of Sigmar, then you're not going to be bothered at all. You'll be like, cool, all these fun things. And if you wanted like a kind of hot pick from me, I'd say pick up a bunch of brutes, pick up Zogrok, pick up a mega boss, pick up a war chanter, pick up a wizard, and just try your hardest to just push as many egregiously powerful brutes at your enemy as you can. Maybe pick yourself up a more grunter that gives strike last. Is it going to win everything? No, but you're a combat army, and I'm sure in the future there'll be some upgrades to make them a little bit better than they currently are, because this index is very similar to the index. The Art-Boys is an interesting change, actually. We should talk about the Art-Boys. Art-Boys could actually see a lot of play. They've got a lot of wounds on the board. They can be quite defensive. They've got 3-up armor save, and now they do all that mortals at the end of in every combat phase, which could be good. So pretty cool. Pretty cool. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let's look at the Kruleboyz. So now we're going to look at Kruleboyz. We are going to look at your battle traits, okay, for the Kruleboyz faction rules. And these are quite interesting, and there have been some changes, or at least one change. The Kruleboyz battle traits, they use dirty tricks. Let's talk about this. This is the passive that you get. As you can see, this is a full page of rules, unlike your Ironjaws brethren. So your army can use 1 dirty trick ability per phase. The effect of a dirty trick ability is only applied if you make a successful dirty trick roll. The success of a dirty trick roll depends on the number of dirty trick abilities your army has already used this battle round. So the first time you use it, it's a 2+, and then it gets worse, and then eventually it ends up on a 5. All right, cool. What can you do? Well, the first dirty trick we'll talk about is in your hero phase, which is done once per turn across the army. You can use the venom-encrusted weapons. You pick a friendly Kruleboyz infantry unit to be the target, then make a dirty trick roll. Until the start of your next turn, the target's attacks score critical hits on unmodified hit rolls of 5, which is especially nice on units like Gut Rippers for doing a ton of damage. So nice. Kruleboyz infantry only, though. And then, do you want to do a bunch of damage? There you go. Okay, next up. You've got sneaky sneaking. Now, this used to be done in the movement phase and has been changed to the hero phase. So this is, I think, in some people's mind, nerf. So sneaky sneaking. Pick a friendly Kruleboyz infantry unit that has 10 or fewer models, is not in combat, and does not use a dirty trick ability this turn to be the target. Then make a dirty trick roll. Remove the target from the battlefield. Set up again wholly within 3 inches of a terrain feature, more than 9 inches from all enemy units. So, you could take a unit of Bolt Boys, teleport them, then do some shooting. Pretty cool. Okay. It also does mean that you won't be able to do venom-encrusted weapons and sneaky sneaking at the same turn. Right at the same time, because they can't have already had a dirty trick done on them. So that's also bad as well. Right, okay, then moving on to Lethal Surprise, which is done in any charge phase. Pick an enemy unit that charges this turn and is in combat with any friendly Kruleboyz unit to be the target, then make a dirty trick roll. Inflict D3 mortal damage on the target. In addition, for the rest of the turn, the target's weapons cannot be affected by the charge +1 damage weapon ability. Now, that's pretty good. That's quite fun, like, especially if you're using this as like, I'm already at the 5-up stage. I might as well make it so that I'm reducing down the damage that could be coming into me. It doesn't happen all the time, but it's a nice like bonus to attempt. Then you've got Noisy Racket, which is your last one. Once per turn in any combat phase, you pick an enemy unit in combat with any friendly Kruleboyz units to be the target. The target has strike last for the rest of the turn. So strike last is also really good, especially as in your core allegiance set. It's there, it exists, it's ready to rock. Yes, it's dice roll dependent. And I think this is one of the things that have caused Kruleboyz players to both love it and hate it, because you set up to do all these clever tactical things, then you don't roll the dice, even when it's a 2+, to get exactly what you need. I think that's made people a little bit sad. But also on the back of that, you do have the ability to do quite a lot of optional stuff, which obviously if we just compare straight with Ironjaws, they get no options at all. So sure, if we look at the whole game, there's not a lot of options, but it does feel fairly thematic, even if when it's been put into reality out there in the world, it's been more difficult to use than necessarily it seems on paper. So those are your battle traits. Next up, we're going to look at your terrain feature, the Scaregob Totem. It's got 12 health and a 4-up save. Don't forget, in the most recent FAQ, you don't have to deploy it if you don't want to. There's 3 rules. One of them, there's 3 rules which describe getting on the terrain feature, which you do in your hero phase, getting off the terrain feature, and what happens with the terrain feature as well. And don't forget, it's 12 basically ablative wounds, maybe for a character. When you do put a character on top of it, which has to be a Kruleboyz infantry hero, they become a shouty boss. Perfect. We've established we can get on it, and then we've got a shouty boss. Now let's go look at the ability Sinister Stare, which might make you feel much better about your ability, about your dirty tricks. Okay, you pick a visible enemy unit in your hero phase or friendly Kruleboyz unit wholly within 12 inches of this terrain feature. If this terrain feature has a shouty boss, you can pick it 18 instead. Until the start of your next turn, if the target, so either the enemy unit or the friendly unit, is picked to be the target, so it's until the start of your next turn, which is quite a long time, right? It's picked to be the target of a dirty trick ability while it's holding the 12 inches of this terrain feature, you add 1 to the dirty tricks. If this terrain feature has a shouty boss, this ability applies to the target's picked to be the target of a dirty trick ability where they're wholly within 18 inches instead. So, shouty boss on top, wholly within 18 inches plus 1. Now, Rob, what happens to if I've got a 2+ roll here, it would become a 1+. Well, then it would be an auto pass, which is pretty nice, which means that specifically that unit can have like an auto pass dirty trick and then a normal 2+ dirty trick. So this gives you like a reliable strike last in your army. Don't hate that. Gives you a reliable +1, reduce their damage down by 1, which is fun. Gives you a reliable venom encrusted weapons. Now, there aren't loads of definite, I know there are loads of abilities in the game that's like 3-up and people generally don't like those, but casting a spell for a buff or doing a prayer for a buff aren't reliable. So now that one of these are free is very cool from your terrain feature. Love that. Next up on your army list, you're going to choose one of your armies, one of your battle formations. You've got 4 to choose from. You've got the Kruleboyz Claw, which gives you the passive Swamp Shroud. For any Kruleboyz units that are wholly within 3 inches of a terrain feature, are not visible to the enemy units that are more than 12 inches away from them. That's okay. That's pretty good, especially if you're going to a heavy shooting meta. We're generally into like a fighty meta. But yeah, it's not too bad, especially if you're trying to just have a couple of small units do battle tactics. If that's your plan. The next one, the middle finger, gives you the Far Killer Bolts ability that you do in your shooting phase. You pick up to 3 friendly Man-Skewer Bolt Boys or Beast-Skewer Killboy units to be the targets. For the rest of the turn, you add 3 inches to the range characteristic of the target's weapons. Pretty nice. Do more threat projection at range with 3 units. It's not just 1 unit. We'll take that. Lightfinger gives you the passive Dead Sneaky. You can use a sneaky, and dirty trick ability twice per turn instead of only once per turn. And now that we can do all of our abilities maybe a little bit more reliably, could be quite interesting. Then you got Trophy Finger, which gives you the passive Meanest Beasts, where companion weapons used by friendly Kruleboyz units have crit 2 hits, which does mean if you wanted to take a bunch of your kind of mounted heroes, all the companions gaining crit 2 hits could be very cool. I think of the 4, I quite like the Swamp Shroud, just to go and grab and do tactics, because I think I should be able to put a bunch of models on the board for doing primary. So I think that's the thing that sings to me. But maybe Trophy Finger is also really good as well. With the changes to Sneaking, I'm not sure if Lightfinger will see as much play, but maybe it will. On your army list, one of your heroes gets to choose one of these 3 heroic traits. Backstabber, pick an enemy hero in combat with both this unit and another friendly Kruleboyz unit to be the target and inflict D3 mortal damage. And you can add 1 to the mortal damage inflicted for each other friendly Kruleboyz unit in combat other than the first. So you could potentially do a ton of mortal damage with that. And that's at the end of any turn. So you can keep doing multiple mortal damage. It's not once per battle or anything like that. That could be okay. Egomaniac gives you a 4-up ward save for one of your characters, but you need, every time you make a successful ward roll, you need to allocate a damage point to a non-hero Kruleboyz infantry unit within this unit's combat range in order to do that. So basically, you can just pass those wounds off to a smaller unit, which is kind of okay, especially when you've got the old Hobgrots available. And then finally, you've got Slippery Scumbag, which is done at the end of any combat phase. If this unit is in combat, roll dice. On a 3+, it can immediately use a retreat ability as if it were your movement phase without any mortal damage being inflicted, which does mean if you get charged, you're just going to be able to Slippery Scumbag away on a 3+, which is pretty fun. I don't hate that at all. So Slippery Scumbag, pretty good, in my opinion. If we go look at the artifacts of power, there are 3 to choose from. One of your heroes can take it. So first one, Mork's Eye Pebble. Once per battle, as a reaction, your opponent declaring an attack ability. For the rest of the turn, Freddy Kruleboyz units have a 5-up ward save while they're holding within 12 inches of this unit. Now, I know it's only once per battle, but that's okay. I'm going to call it right now. That's okay. And you're going to want that sometimes. Like, you are going to get into combat with your opponent, and you're not going to be mad that you got a 5-up ward save sometimes. The Swamp Staff is a passive where if this unit is a wizard, it can use the Unbind ability of it. If this unit is not a wizard, it can use the Unbind ability as if it had Wizard 1. Otherwise, add 1 to this unit's power level, which makes it a 2-cast wizard. So probably easily the best upgrade. And then finally, the Eye Biter Ash is once per battle in any combat phase. Pick an enemy unit in combat with this unit to be the target. Subtract 1 from hit rolls and wound rolls to the target's attacks for the rest of the turn, which is not bad considering also if you use your right sneaky trick at the right time, then you could also make them minus damage as well. But it's only once per battle, whereas you're probably going to get more value over the course of 5 turns with the Swamp Staff, which is quite nice for more casting. So those are your artifacts. Let me know which one you like. All right. Now we're going to look at your spell lore, the Lore of the Swamp. It's time for me to remind you that if you do take the manifestations that you've now gained access to, that one of your manifestations is potentially going to give +2 to cast to one of your wizards, especially as you're able to maybe make one of your wizards a power level 2 wizard. That's +2 to cast to 2 different spells. Kind of okay. All right, so we have the Kruleboyz spell lore, Lore of the Swamp, and the first spell, which is your unlimited spell, which means multiple different wizards can cast it, but the same wizard can't cast it more than once, is cast on a 5. Pick a friendly Kruleboyz wizard, and then pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches. Roll a dice for each model in the target unit. For each 6+, you inflict 1 mortal damage on the target. Now, the game doesn't necessarily, or isn't necessarily flooded with hordes of infantry. It's a lot more of an elite game with like much larger models in the game generally. So this isn't that effective. And even if you had 60 models, it would only kill 10. Horde clearing spells are kind of funny in that they are worse because they are targeting a horde which can sustain a lot of mortal wound damage. This would be much more effective if it was just like D3 mortal wounds against any target, because you would just choose like a monster and that would be more value. But you can do it multiple times. Maybe it'll be useful. The next spell, Choking Mist, is cast on a 7. And again, now potentially cast on a 5, which is nice. Pick a friendly Kruleboyz wizard to cast your spell. Pick a visible enemy unit within 12 inches to be the target. So just within 12 inches. Subtract 1 from the attack's characteristic of the target's melee weapons until the start of your next turn. Especially with the new Sneaky Sneak in, your ability to teleport in the hero phase and then cast his spell. Maybe that's a nice combination. And then you got Mork's Cunning cast on a 6. Could be cast on a 4 now with that new manifestation. Pick a friendly Kruleboyz wizard to cast his spell, and then pick a friendly Kruleboyz unit older than 12. To start your next turn, you add 1 to the save rolls for the target, which means also when you all-out defense, you're going to be able to all-out defense with... you can all-out defense as well for +2 to your save. Also worth remembering as well that one of our other spells that we've got, one of our other manifestations, is going to stop units doing redeploy as well. Pretty nice. So until the start of your next turn, add 1 to save rolls for the target. So that would be against shooting and fighting. And that's for a long period of time, which is pretty good. So cool. Well, now we're moving into heroes. We're moving into all of the units that we've got available to you. And we're going to start out with the Mouth of Gore, Gobsprak. So he is a level 2 wizard, which is great. Wizard levels are super important because they bring utility and help to your army through the spell lore or through casting manifestations. Also, War Master, you can see down here with the keywords, and he's unique, so you can only have one of them. If he's War Master, he has to be your general in your army. So he's got a 6-up ward save as well, and he's a wizard level 2, so he can cast 2 spells. Apart from that, his survivability is pretty low, 14 health with a 5-up save and a 6-up ward save, so very fragile. But thankfully, he can move quite fast with movement 12 and has got control value of 5. He's not what I would describe as a damage dealer, with his output from his mount and him being pretty weak source. What he is like an anti-caster caster. He's got an ability called the Screaming Mandrake, where once per battle, as a reaction to your opponent declaring a spell ability, you can try to unbind on 3d6. This obviously ties in really well with the passive Mork Says No, where each time this unit unbinds a spell, you inflict d3 mortal damage on the caster. And if the unbinding roll was a 10 or more, you inflict d6 mortal damage on the caster instead. Now, obviously, spellcasting is something that's really important in Age of Sigmar because you're able to put a lot of manifestations down, with some of the spell lore spells being quite important as well. And being able to constantly snipe at enemy heroes does feel quite nice, but it does mean Gobsprat's going to have to be close enough, 30 inches, to those wizards, and going to have to start being involved in the game, at which point his fragility becomes an issue. And then he's also got a spell cast on a 6 called Strangle Hex, where you pick a visible unit within 18 inches of this unit to be the target and make a casting roll of 2d6. If you roll a number of dice equal to the target's health characteristic to a maximum of 10, for each 4+, inflict one mortal wound, 1 mortal damage on the target, sorry. Basically what this means is if you've got a big monster, you can do 5 mortal damage to it at 18 inches on a 6, which with your new manifestation could be a 4. Also means you can cast it in the opponent's turn and really start to hamper monsters, which is kind of fun. That's a lot of mortal damage to do at 18 inches. And he's also got a rampage called Crush to Death, which is done in any combat phase, which does mean every combat phase, where you pick an enemy unit and combat this unit and roll a dice. If the roll exceeds the target's health characteristic, 1 model in the target is slain. So it's kind of like a Star Drake. You can just eat 1 model, which is cool. As an anti-cast, you need a wizard in this army. He's pretty expensive and he's also like fairly fragile, but he's a 2-cast wizard, which is really, really effective when manifestations are a part of the game as well. Your spell law's not necessarily like tantamount to how you're going to win the game. It doesn't have any like crucial spells. Maybe the ability to reduce down how many attacks they have is important. So, but the ability to maybe shut down enemy casting, or at least the threat of doing it, thanks to Mork Says No, might be a reason that you play with Gobsprat. Next unit we're going to talk about is the Killer Boss on Corpse Ripper Vulture, which everyone is a fan of, apparently. 14 health with a pretty incredible 4-up armor save for this army. He's got an okay combat profile, but I think the reason a lot of people like him is because of his ability he does in the charge phase called the Vulture Dive. If this unit charges its phase, you pick an enemy unit in combat with it to be the target. Roll a number of dice equal to the unmodified charge roll. So 2d6, unless you're running around with Kragnos, in which case it's 3d6. For each 4+, you inflict 1 mortal damage on the target. So 3d6, average is 11, 5 or 6 mortal damage on the charge, pretty fun. Take the artifact or the trait we talked about earlier, the Slippery Scumbag. So then on a 3+, he then is going to move away before he ever gets charged, and then have him countercharge, run around, and just be an absolute nightmare. Right, then you have a reaction. You declared a redeploy command for a friendly Gut Rippers unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit. That's his other ability called Commanding View. If you roll a 1 to 3 when determining the distance, you can now move 4 instead when doing a redeploy. Big question whether or not that's super important to you, but I think the Slippery Scumbag Vulture Dive combo is very fun. So the next unit is a Killer Boss on Great Gnashtooth. He is a support role melee character with 10 health and a 3-up save, pretty good armor save, moves 10 inches. And then he's got an okay combat profile with 10 attacks in total, damage 2, but they all hit on 4s, which is a bit sad. He's got 2 abilities. The first one, in your hero phase, all part of the plan. You pick another friendly Kruleboyz unit wholly within 9, add 3 to the target's control score for the start of next turn. Games Workshop really wanted the control score thing to be a part of the game, but didn't end up being that useful. And the other ability, that's ours, you gets, is a passive, where while this unit is contesting an objective you do not control, you add 1 to hit rolls for combat attacks made by friendly Kruleboyz units wholly within 12 inches of this unit. That's a lot of stipulations to get +1 to hit on multiple different units, specifically also that you are contesting an objective you don't control. So pretty good on the offense, but I think ultimately if he's currently priced at 180 points, it's probably too expensive. But if he was around 100, then maybe he'd be interesting to look at. Our next unit is a Killer Boss with Stabgrot. It's got 6 health, 4-up save, and he's kind of like a frontline melee character. It doesn't have a ward save, but does have a Stabgrot, which is important. And once per battle in any combat phase, you can unleash the Stabgrot. Where you pick one of the following effects. You either pick an enemy unit and combat this unit to be the target and inflict D3 mortal damage on the target, or this unit has a 5-up ward save for the rest of the turn, which 6 health, 4-up save, 5-up ward save could be okay. His combat profile is 5 attacks with crit mortals, which is not bad, damage 2. However, the reason that you're probably going to take this support character is because of the reaction, keep him in line, and it's a reaction to you declaring an all-out attack command for a friendly Kruleboyz infantry unit. If this unit is wholly within 12 inches of a unit using all-out attack, you can add 1 to wound rolls, which does mean you're going to get +1 to hit and +1 to wound, which, with economies of scale on 20 Gut Rippers, feels pretty nice. +1 to hit and +1 to wound. We don't hate that at all. Don't forget, they're also potentially, thanks to the dirty tricks, getting crit in on 5s with their crit ability as well. So pretty nice, I think, especially if you're running loads of Gut Rippers. Also worth noting, obviously, with the new seasonal special rules, where you can add +2 to the movement of a unit, of infantry units, that makes your Gut Rippers move faster, and he is a character that could be that sergeant. Our next unit is the Merc Knob with Bolcher Banner. He's got 6 health and 4 up save, crit mortals with 4 attacks. He's kind of a support role if you're taking lots of models, because he has the power of Kragnos, where friendly Kruleboyz units have a 6 up ward save while they're wholly within 12 inches of this unit. So that's quite good if you're taking something like 40 Gut Rippers. So now you've got 80 health with a 6 up ward save. It's pretty nice. He's also in any combat phase got the ability to do Breath of the Mire Drakes, where you pick each enemy unit in combat this unit to be the target, then roll a dice for each target. On a 1, this ability has no effect. However, on a 2 to 5, you inflict mortal damage. On a 6, you inflict D3 mortal damage on the target, which is okay. Are you going to keep him around in combat long enough? I don't know, but the 6 up ward save is good, especially if you have a lot of bodies on the board. Our next unit is the Swampcaller Shaman, and you're going to need one of these because it's obviously a support role wizard. He's a power level 1, but we know we can take the staff item to be power level 2. He's got the ability to add +1 to his casting roll thanks to the passive Pot Grot, where you can add 1 to casting rolls to this unit while the Pot Grot is on the battlefield. And if you make an unmodified casting roll of 4 or less, then the Pot Grot is removed. But obviously with our new manifestations, I know I keep going on about it, potentially +3 to cast, I'll take that. That's pretty cool. He's also got the Foul Elixirs ability, which once per turn in your hero phase, you can pick a friendly Kruleboyz infantry unit wholly within 12, roll a dice, and on a 2 up, you add 1 to the save roll to the target for the rest of the turn. And on a 1, inflict D3 mortal damage on the target. So +1 save. We know there is another way to get +1 save as well. It's very reliable. It's on a 2+, and then he's got 6 health and a 6 up save. You probably need a wizard. This is a way to get a cheap 2-cast wizard that's also got pluses to cast and also can have +1 save to a unit. It's not quite a Chaos Sorcerer Lord who just gives 5 up ward save to a unit, but it's pretty good. Our next hero is a frontline melee fighter. It's a breaker boss on Mire Brute Troggoth. He's got 12 health with a 4 up save, but only moves a measly 5 inches. And sadly, he's a monster, so it's going to be tough to get additional movement on him. Now, in combat, he's got 5 attacks, damage 2 with crit mortals from the Bident Goad, but the Mire Brute's clubs have got 4 attacks at damage 3, and sure, they hit at the pretty rough hitting on 4s. However, there are ways to add more attacks to this guy, thanks to the Breaker Harness ability, which you can do in any combat phase. You inflict D3 mortal damage on this unit. For each damage point allocated, you can add 2 extra attacks to the Mire Brute's clubs, which means you can have 10 attacks doing damage 3. Not bad. He's currently 220 points, so maybe that's a little bit much for that, but that's pretty cool. Then he's also got the ability at the start of any turn to heal D3 to this unit, and he has an ability once per turn across the army at the end of any turn where you can tear limb from limb, where pick an enemy infantry within an inch, roll a dice. If the roll exceeds the target's health characteristic, 1 model in the target unit is slain. He doesn't apply bonuses to the rest of the army. So it's like a solo melee character, kind of like the Mega Boss or Maw Crusher in many ways. So you've got to ask yourself, do you really need that from 220 points? Or is 10 or 20 Gut Rippers better because your little support characters can increase how good they are as well, which is kind of an interesting choice, especially for damaging units. But at least he's a cool model. Our next hero is a Swamp Boss Scumdrek. He's got 15 health, 4 up save, moves only 8 inches, but he's a frontline melee fighter, which also makes our Hobgrot Slitters better. So in combat, the Rider's got 5 attacks with crit mortals doing damage 2. The Companion's got 6 attacks, damage 2. And don't forget, we could take them in the battle formation that's going to give us a bunch of crit 2 hits. And then the Bite has got 1 attack, but with D3 plus 3 damage. Okay, he's got this ability in the deployment phase called the Bet Master, where you pick an enemy unit on the battlefield to beat the bet. You add 1 to wound rolls for attacks made by this unit and any friendly Hobgrot Slitter units that target the bet. So +1 wound army-wide to any Hobgrot Slitters is pretty interesting. He's also got an ability called the Counting Crew in the deployment phase, where you pick a friendly unit of Hobgrot Slitters. For the rest of the battle, the target Slitter's knives have crit mortals, while it's wholly within 12 inches of this unit. Love that. You can get a lot of attacks out of Hobgrot Slitters, and we'll talk about that later. And finally, he's got an ability at the end of any turn, which is a rampage, which once per turn across the army, where you pick an enemy monster in combat with this unit, roll a number of dice equal to the number of damage points the target has. For each 5+, inflict mortal damage on the target. So it's kind of a way of like finally killing off a monster at the end of combat. Now, 15 health and 4 up save is pretty nice, but he's fairly slow at move 18. So you're going to need to screen out and protect him. But the idea of bringing a bunch of Hobgrot Slitters to go stab people is pretty funny. Our next hero is the new Hobgrot Slitter boss. A lot of hopes and dreams put on this guy's shoulders. He's a frontline melee fighter with 5 health and a 6-up save, which isn't necessarily the profile you want, with no ward save for a frontline fighter. Now, he does have 4 attacks with crit mortals that are damage D3, so that could be pretty good. And he's got the same rend as Gobsprak. Not Gobsprak, same rend as the Fist of Gork. What's his name? Godrak. So, you know, he's pretty strong. He's as strong as the strongest orc that's alive. But I don't think his melee profile is good enough. Maybe the reason you would take him is because of his company tactics, which is a reaction to you declaring a fight ability with this unit. If he fights against, not against the same unit, but within 3 inches of a unit of Hobgrot Slitters, you can choose that unit to activate next, and then you can add 1 to wound rolls for the Hobgrot Slitters. It's pretty nice. So you can make Hobgrot Slitters even more scary. And then he's got an ability called Toxic Stash, where once per battle in any combat phase, you can pick an enemy infantry hero in combat with this unit to be the target, roll 2d6. If the roll exceeds the target's health characteristic, it's automatically destroyed. So he's like a little assassin that runs forward, 2d6, takes a unit off the board. That's fantastic. And then we might as well go talk about the Hobgrot Slitters. This is a unit of 10. You can have a unit of 10, reinforceable up to 20. Each Hobgrot Slitter's got 1 health with a 6-up save and no ward save, worth mentioning. They have got a shooting profile, which is 1 attack per model. It hits on a 4 wounds on a 3, rend 1, damage 1. And, as I've said, shoots in combat, which is pretty cool. And then the Slitter Knives is 2 attacks each. Hits on a 4, wounds on a 5 with no rend, damage 1, which does mean a reinforced unit of 20 is going to have 41 attacks. If you have a Slitter boss nearby, an all-out attack, hit on 3s, wound on 4s with no rend, damage 1. But if you take him with a Scumdrek, these 41 attacks could all have crit mortals. And if you did venom-encrusted weapons, they could have crit mortals hitting on 5s, which is a lot of mortal wounds, really. And they've also got an ability at the end of any turn called Scrap Bang, where you pick an enemy unit in combat with this unit and roll a dice. On a 3+, you inflict 1 mortal damage on the target. If the unit, then this unit can immediately use the retreat ability as if it were your movement phase without any mortal damage being inflicted. Now, this is quite a nice ability, but a little bit hopeful because I assume the Hobgrot Slitters just die. However, like, I think taking a bunch of these, a Slitter boss, Scumdrek, probably isn't going to be the strongest army, but it could be really, really fun. And I quite like that idea. Our next unit is the Snatcher boss on Sludgeraker Beast, who was super popular in the index because he was able to give +1 damage to Gut Rippers. They've changed that for a very interesting, a very convoluted mechanic. So he's got 14 health with a 4-up save, and he's got a pretty good combat profile: 3 attacks, damage 3, 6 attacks, damage 2. And then his Sludgeraker Beast has got 1 attack, D3+3. Obviously, you can get crit hits on those with the companion ability, with the battle formation, sorry. So he's a hero and a monster. He's not a wizard or a priest, but he does have a kind of support role with his ability, Sludgeraker Venom, where in your hero phase, you pick a friendly Kruleboyz unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit to be the target. That unit has the Sludgeraker Venom keyword for the rest of the turn. Okay, so you've given a Kruleboyz unit Sludgeraker Venom. What happens? Well, at the end of any turn, once per turn across the army, you can use the Festering Wounds ability. Pick up to 3 enemy units that had any damage points allocated to them by combat attacks made by this unit, or a friendly unit with a Sludgeraker Venom keyword to be the targets. You roll D3 for each target, and on a 2+, you inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the roll. You subtract 1 from wound rolls for the target's attacks until the end of the next turn. Now, this definitely isn't the same as double damage on Gut Rippers, but because of the Sludgeraker Venom doesn't have a way to be gone, I don't think, then you can constantly make many of the enemy units -1 to wound, which feels like that's pretty good for your army. Feels like there's a lot of debuffs available in this army. Obviously, you can take away the plus damages on the charge. You can make units strike last. But like, you've got this ability to like constantly debuff the enemy. But the real question is the game got a slow enough tempo that that's going to be effective for you over the course of the game? We'll have to find out. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Our next non-hero unit is a Marshcrawler Sloggoth. It's 1 model with 10 health and a 4-up save. He's a support piece for your army because of the passive On the March. While they're wholly within 12 inches of this unit, friendly Kruleboyz infantry units can use charge abilities even if they use Yun. run abilities. So now you've got run, charge, potentially +2 movement as well, making these units very, very fast. You could take a unit of Gut Rippers, give them run, charge, +2 move, give them +2 to their save, venom encrusted weapons, so they're getting 5+ for their crits. Pretty nice. This guy also heals D3 at the start of any turn, so any chip damage is going to be tough to get to him, which is pretty cool. Our next unit are Monster Killers, which have ended up being really popular because of their anti-monster ability. There's 7 models in the unit with 2 health and a 5-up save, and they've also got quite a lot of attacks. You can't reinforce this unit, but they've got 7 models with 7 models with 3 attacks. They have anti-monster rend 1 and crit mortals, so actually quite a lot of attacks from these guys. Now, they've got their anti-monster technology comes in 2 stages. They have bait and trap, which is in any combat phase, they pick any monster they're in combat with, roll a dice and add 1 to the roll if the target is damaged. On a 3+, the target has strike last for the rest of the turn, which is especially nice if you're trying to bring down one of the main support pieces in the enemy army. There's lots of monsters in the game. And then they also have an ability where once per turn as a reaction to their opponent declaring a rampage, you can use a tough grot to swallow, where the egg grot, roll a dice. On a 2+, the rampage ability has no effect. And on a 1, remove this unit's clutcher grot from the battlefield. It's a great piece of anti-monster technology in an army that really needs to keep shutting down your opponent. Feels like it's meant to be a debuff army that does some damage. This is going to help reduce how effective monsters are, while also doing a lot of attacks thanks to the Monster Killers. Our next unit is Gut Rippers. It's a unit of 10 reinforceable up to a unit of 20. They've got 2 health each and a 5-up save, but as we know, we've got a load of different ways to maybe provide some support for a reinforced unit. You've got the ability to give +2 save, you've got the ability to use dirty tricks for strike last or teleporting, lots of different options. Now, they do have crit mortals on their profile, so with venom encrusted weapons, you'll be crit mortaling on 5s, which with a reinforced unit of 20, then that's going to give you 40 health, potentially with a Merc Knob banner, that's going to give you a 6-up ward save, but a reinforced unit of 20 is going to be doing 41 attacks with crit mortals, potentially crit mortals on 5s. If you don't get the crit mortals off, unfortunately, they're pretty lackluster. Hitting on a 4, wound on a 3 with 0 rend and damage 1. They've got scare tactics as well, where on a 3+, you subtract 1 from the hit roll, so attacks made by non-hero units that target this unit for the rest of the turn. Really, as your frontline kind of bruiser unit, they don't obviously compare to things like brutes. They don't compare to things like Chaos Warriors, as an example, and they don't really have the output that you would have wanted them to, with the loss of what we saw from the big monster that gave them +1 damage. So they feel a little bit underwhelming now as a frontline fighting force, but maybe there's enough survivability there with the pluses to save and the 6-up ward save to maybe keep them holding objectives for longer. So our last 2 units from this roster are the Manskewer Boltboyz. Manskewer Boltboyz are 3 models, reinforceable up to unit of 6. They're super popular because they're normally very cheap. They've only got 2 health and a 5-up save, so they're very fragile, but their ranged weapon has got 2 different shooting modes. It's either got a 12-inch shooting attack that's got crit auto wound with 2 attacks, 4 3s, rend 1, damage 2, or 1 shot at 18 inches that's 3 3s, rend 2, damage 2. Don't forget, you can extend the range of this by taking the right battle formation. Okay? They're obviously terrible in combat. They've also got a passive called Manskewer Crossbows, where each time this unit uses shoot ability, either pick the hasty shot or the aim shot weapon characteristics for all of the attacks it makes with its Manskewer bows. So that just tells you what you've got to do. And then you've got in your shooting phase, pick them off. If this unit has not used a move ability, you can add 1 to hit rolls to this unit shooting attacks for the rest of the turn. So you can be hitting on 3s. And you can do that on multiple units as well. These are your cheap and cheerful long strikes.
Mary Xmas Ron.
Thank you very much for the £10 donation. I hope everyone's enjoying watching this video. And then lastly, these are good. These are good. You should pick up some of these. And then the Beastskewer Kruleboyz is super interesting with 5 health, 5-up save. It's a single model.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Low.
Thank you very much, Dad Bond, as well, with the £20 donation. The Beastskewer Kruleboyz has got a 24-inch range, 2 shots, hit on 4s, wound on 2s, rend 2, damage D6, anti-monster rend 1, so it's going to be rend 3. It's got great range. The damage characteristic of the Beastskewer Bolt Bow, is 6 if it's hitting a monster. That's 2 shots with flat damage 6 at rend 3 at 24 inches. That's brilliant. And then lastly, pick them off. If they're not moved, you can add +1 to your hit rolls. So that is going to be just 2 of these sat at the back of the board. It's going to be 4 shots, hitting on 3s, wound on 2s, rend 3, damage 6 into monsters, which is absolutely great, and I love that. And that is the end of the Kruleboyz. I got to say, I don't really know what to do with the Kruleboyz now. I feel like those Gut Rippers were pretty essential in being able to do all those, all of the big damage that you needed, or to front load, and that's super important. The Dirty Tricks change is going to be really interesting. I think there's going to be a lot of people discussing that. I think overall disappointment in that the book is not that much different, but the changes seem to have been changes which haven't improved how the army plays. In fact, it seems to have reduced how the army plays, which is in. But you don't forget, you do have that pretty awesome new terrain feature and also the manifestations. And I feel both of those feel like they're very strong. So we'll have to see how it does work out when Kruleboyz players, take that initial kind of disappointment and start working it through, and then be like, cool, how am I going to start to deal with the problems on the tabletop, and what am I going to do? And the best way to do that, not the best way, but a good way, let me know in the comments below what you think. Tell me how you feel about it, what combos you're going to try, what you really enjoyed. Let me know. I think that's going to be interesting. You've got to remember also that these aren't nerfs in relation to how the army was already doing. This book was written before Age of Sigmar ever was launched. It was probably went to print over 6 months ago. So they had no idea that the army would or wouldn't be successful based on how, when they wrote it and when they sent it off to print. So you can be, as an Ironjaws and Kruleboyz player, maybe quite hopeful that they'll do some pretty significant changes over the next couple of years. Or I'd like to assume that that's going to be the case. I don't necessarily know that's true, but I'm hopeful. Anyway, let me know what you think. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you all soon. Goodbye.